Howdy Space Rangers, Captainphoenix here. This video has been a long time coming. This video is a really special one and I've been working on it for about a year, mostly because the first time I released it, YouTube blocked it. But we're back now. For those who don't know, this video is a part 2. Part 1 of this video was me talking about what I would change if I was one who was to write The Last Jedi or modify it to be better. That video came out basically a year ago. If you want to go see my thoughts on how I would change The Last Jedi, definitely go check it out. I will leave a link down in the description and comments below. But this video is going to talk about the Rise of Skywalker. Yes, that's right. Today I am talking about how I would change the Rise of Skywalker if I was one to write it or modify it to be, well, better. And so that's what we're doing today. For those who are interested in how I would change The Last Jedi, again, links in description and comments. But if you just want to see how I would change the Rise of Skywalker, or if you want to see basically the part 2 to my last video, stick around. Today we're talking about what if I wrote the Rise of Skywalker. So let's begin. First things first, we are changing the title of this movie. It's not going to be called Rise of Skywalker anymore. We're changing it to Path of the Jedi. I was considering changing it back to its original title, which was going to be Duel of the Fates, but I wasn't in love with that title, as Duel of Fates was originally for the music in The Phantom Menace, and a lot of people probably wouldn't get that reference. On top of that, yes, it's deciding the fate of the Jedi and Sith, however, I don't think it would be as impactful as the other movie. Another title that came through my mind would have also been The Rise of Palpatine, but that wouldn't make sense for a big finale film. So that's what I would name this movie, Path of the Jedi instead, which is already a fan favorite title that a lot of people like. In my opinion, it makes a lot more sense story-wise and thematic-wise. Next thing we're changing to the story is that Palpatine is out. He is dead. He is not the main villain of this story. There is no
somehow Palpatine returned.
Yeah, in my opinion, Palpatine's inclusion alone basically ruined this movie. So we're scrapping him. Kylo Ren is the main villain of this movie. As such, we're also removing all retcons this movie made to The Last Jedi, basically because I already did how I would change The Last Jedi, but also as a movie on its own, we're changing all of the retcons, meaning Kylo does not get his helmet back or he doesn't repair it. There is no Force dyad in this movie. Kylo and Rey aren't connected through the Force. I found it a dumb concept then, I still find it a dumb concept now. So there is no Force dyad. These are just two people who really don't like each other or just have a connection with each other. So now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, how would I start this movie? Well, for the first act, we would have a guerrilla war scene between the First Order and the Resistance. This scene would include the characters of Poe, Finn, and Rose, and it wouldn't be them stealing a Star Destroyer like it was in the Duel of the Fates script. It would be more akin to the Battle of Scarif from Rogue One on the actual battlefield with like AT-ATs and all those kind of things going on, and speeder bikes and whatnot. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, wherever, we have Luke and Rey who are traveling in the galaxy, helping and inspiring people to join or support the Resistance, letting them know that this is the only way to peace. You know, actually being Jedi. I would also acknowledge the time difference in this movie. It would have been a year since The Last Jedi, and during that year, Luke has been training Finn and Rey how to be Jedi. And yes, I did say Finn, as in my Last Jedi video, I did say Finn would reveal himself to be Force sensitive in that movie. So in this movie, he'd already be an up-and-coming Jedi Padawan. Another thing I'd also bring up in this movie is that after the guerrilla war scene, when the soldiers are coming back to the rebel base and when Rey and Luke also come back to the rebel base, we would pass by Leia's grave. Yes, in this movie, Leia is already dead before like the opening credits hit. She has died in between movies, but they built a memorial in her honor. So like there'll probably be her grave somewhere and like a statue of her in another corner. And we would give each character time to grieve over her, especially Luke and Poe, because those two characters were the ones who are closest to Leia. So Luke would obviously be like, oh yeah, I miss when I spent X time with Leia doing dash blah blah blah. And Poe would be suffering as he would have to fill Leia's boots as the new general and leader of the Resistance, and he feels like he doesn't have it in him to be the next leader, essentially. But that would basically be Poe's story in this movie, learning to accept himself as a leader. And as for Kylo, we would focus on his story, showing his descent into madness, especially after learning that his mother is dead. Because if you think about it, in both The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi, we saw that Kylo still had a string to the light side, basically because of Leia. She's the only one who could speak to the true Ben Solo underneath. So having Leia die would definitely send Kylo Ren into a descent of madness, as he realizes the only other person who saw good in him is no longer alive, and now he basically doubles down and gives into the dark side fully in this movie. In this movie, Kylo Ren is the big boss final battle guy. There is no redemption story for him, more so to say, but we'll get on that later. The opening first act is mostly done. So, what's the story of this movie? Well, to put it simply, I think this movie would operate if we used a very basic plot, a MacGuffin story. I think having a MacGuffin that both Kylo and Rey want would definitely push the characters to go on their whole journey, planet hopping experience that we know for Star Wars movies. So what would this MacGuffin be? I wouldn't really know what it would be exactly. I just think that a weapon or an ancient Force relic would really help. Something that would give each other's opposing team an advantage in this war. And I think going to a Force-sensitive planet like Mortis would really help. And hell, you could bring in the father, the daughter, and the son if you want. I do think this was also part of the original Duel of the Fates script, so I think that this is something that the movie should have gone for, considering that it's supposed to be the final movie in the Skywalker saga. Having it be so in tune with the Force that, again, they would go to like a Force-sensitive planet would be the case. And again, having them go after a MacGuffin would be the easiest way to get those characters there. It's not really more about the journey or the purpose of that MacGuffin. It's basically of what we're going to be doing there and how the story will unfold itself there and what these characters will be doing. And of course, as I mentioned, how the journey is important to the story. I think having moments where we get to see character traits of these characters would really help well. Building up the camaraderie between our main cast of characters as they go on this journey would really help improve the story, as we see that they really do view each other as friends and family, and that there is a lot at stake here, and that any one of these characters die. Basically, these guys talking would make us feel for them and would make us not want to see them, die. So I think building up that camaraderie would help a lot, especially considering that Rey, Poe, and Finn are supposed to be the main trio of this trilogy. They're supposed to be the ones who carry it on their backs with just their personalities alone, much like how the last two trilogies did. So I think them building on their relationship in this last movie to give the audience that lasting impression after the movie's over would be a really huge plus. Also, building up the connection and drama between Rey and Kylo would also be instrumental for this movie. I'm not saying we do the Force dyad thing, I'm just saying building on their deep connection with each other would be a strong way for this movie to go out. Also, since I'm talking about how the journey is kind of important here, as they visit different planets, I think it would be important to have the audience and characters see how the rest of the galaxy reacted to losing their central government and getting taken over by the First Order in a matter of months. Because basically, from the rest of the galaxy's point of view, we never saw how they reacted to losing, like, the central hub worlds, essentially, when Starkiller Base destroyed them all. So I think in this movie, having them react more to the First Order, now that it's a stronger power over the galaxy, would be really cool, and would also make it more down to earth for the Star Wars characters. It shows that what they're doing here, the fights they're fighting here, does have big consequences, and it sets up the stakes for what the end of the movie shall be. Basically letting everyone know that, yeah, if the First Order wins, we have all of this to lose, and this is why we want the Resistance to win, other than people just referencing the war as this distant off thing that nobody really knows about, and we don't know what's at stake here. At least it's better than just having a sudden Star Destroyer Death Star army wreck every planet, because, yeah, a lot is at stake of that one, my dude. Crazy. Another thing I think would be very important to this movie is having encounters with the Knights of Ren, especially as they're pursuing and trying to stop Rey, Finn, and the others from accomplishing their mission. And as they continue on their journey, the characters kill them off one by one in very creative ways. Because basically, the sequel trilogy as of this point in time has run out of villains. Kylo is the main last villain, so it wouldn't make sense for him and Rey to be fighting all throughout the movie. So I think the Knights of Ren would provide to be really cool canon fodder. Not just canon fodder for the sake of it, but in interesting ways. Give them interesting deaths. Have Rey find new ways of fighting them. And as we know, some of the Knights of Ren are Force sensitive, meaning she can't just whack her lightsaber at them or Force choke them all. She has to find different ways of overcoming her enemies, thus growing skills to finally defeat Kylo at the end of the movie. That way, you finally give the Knights of Ren a proper purpose in the story. Another thing I would introduce is probably a flashback scene or two with Luke versus Snoke in the past, because as we know, Luke and Snoke did have a history at some point or another. So I think having a flashback to them struggling with each other, especially over Ben's destiny, it would be really cool, and it would also show off more of Luke's character and how he slowly came to his fall, or at least make old Luke seem more believable. Anyways, I do think the purpose of this flashback scene would be to show how much he cares for Ben and expand on the drama between the two of them. And this was even even a plot point in the original Duel of the Fates script is that Ghost Luke was essentially haunting Ben throughout all of that movie. So I think doing the same thing here would help immensely, where we have Ghost Luke aiding Rey on her journey, while at the same time doing everything he can to hinder Kylo Ren on his journey to avoid him overpowering the Resistance. Because as of this point, the First Order is the big power in the galaxy. So every little bit of help towards the Resistance counts. And that's another thing I think this movie should have, is that I've already talked about how introducing the public's point of view on things and showing what the stakes are is instrumental to this movie. But showing how dire the stakes are would help a lot, as we get to see the First Order be this huge superpower in the entire galaxy. Seeing how immense they are in size would really give a sense of scale to this movie and make it feel more like a finale, and the Resistance is literally pulling all of their scraps and straws and stops to finally beat them once and for all. So Luke even helping out in whatever little way he can would be really essential and cool to the story. So yeah, Kylo being this crazy maniacal ruler, maniacal ruler over the First Order would be essential to the story, just to show how big of a threat they are. Luke haunting him would also be really good for the story, and I think it would expand on the drama between the two of them, because we didn't get a lot of interactions between Kylo and Luke. So I think this would really remedy that, and of course, as I mentioned, Luke helping the Resistance would also be a big help for the story. Basically, this movie would also do a lot of character development for Luke, despite him being dead. So there you go, you're welcome, Disney. Another thing I would add is have a fight between Rey and Kylo, similar to what they were going for on the second Death Star on Endor in Rise of Skywalker. So the fight would be more or less the same as it was in that movie, except this time Luke does his Force vision thing from The Last Jedi to talk to Kylo. Basically, what Leia did, it's a mixture of what he did at the end of The Last Jedi and what Leia did in Rise of Skywalker. Luke would appear as a Force vision and come to stop Kylo from killing Rey. Yes, in this fight, Rey would lose to Kylo. However, since Luke is not on this planet, not on that planet at that point in time during Rey and Kylo's fight, he would die due to exhaustion or whatever from expelling that much energy into the Force. So his death would more or less be the same as it was in Last Jedi. The only major thing I changed is that he doesn't die in Last Jedi, and he doesn't use the Force vision thing in Last Jedi. He uses it here instead. I think this is more thematic for his character. Plus, Luke dying now opens the road for Rey to develop on her own as a character, as now the mentor is gone and she has to fight her own battles. Again, basic storytelling that Star Wars has been known for since day one. After this fight, Kylo realizes that Ben Solo, the good side of him, is now too far gone. He is not redeemable, and after all he's done and everyone he's loved and cared for dies for him, he fully commits to being Kylo Ren. His mom is gone, his uncle is gone, everyone who ever supported him is gone, and now he's basically on his own. Basically, he's become a villain with nothing to lose, and as such, Kylo now dedicates himself to the dark side. And he beats Rey in this battle, who, thanks to Luke's help, barely escapes, but obviously with a few injuries. And towards the climax of the movie, after Rey has shown that she still believes there's good in Kylo Ren, and after now being the last Jedi, after Luke is dead, well, aside from Finn, Rey is now knighted by all the Jedi of the past. So towards the climax of the movie, Rey would be knighted by all the Jedi of the past. All the Force ghosts would come in, Luke, Anakin, Mace, Obi-Wan, Yoda, all that fun stuff. They would all come in and knight Rey as the new Grand Master and future of the Jedi. Thus, given a dichotomy between Rey and Kylo, Rey would now be a character who was born with nothing, but now has everything to lose, whereas Kylo is a character who was born with essentially everything, but now he's devolved into being this crazy villain who has nothing to lose. Thus, he has no fear left whatsoever into becoming, delving into the dark side and all that stuff. Basically, Rey is now the purest of Jedi who has to take down the most Sith Skywalker out there. And I feel that by keeping Rey a nobody, as in not Palpatine's granddaughter, this message would hit harder, as a nobody is able to beat a Skywalker, and Skywalkers were previously known as the Chosen Ones in their story. By the way, I didn't mention it earlier, but in this story, Rey does have a new lightsaber. She's able to make herself a double-bladed yellow lightsaber. This is a mixture of two ideas. The double-bladed lightsaber staff comes from Duel of the Fates, which I think was a really cool idea they should have kept in the movie. However, the yellow color comes from its meaning, also from the Rise of Skywalker, because I think the yellow does fit her character better. But yellow, at least in terms of Star Wars, means that if you have a yellow lightsaber, you're most likely a temple guard. You're someone who's willing to protect protect and guard, the purity of the Jedi Order. And I think Rey being the last Jedi in this case, because remember, all the Jedi before came to knight her, makes sense. She's now the last standing force between the Jedi Order and complete destruction and chaos. So I think her having a double-bladed yet lightsaber staff, a yellow double-bladed lightsaber staff, would be really cool for this story, and it fits her character, as mentioned. As for Finn, who I did mention is a Jedi in this movie as well, he would actually inherit and fix Anakin's lightsaber. So he would be the first non-Skywalker to actually wield that thing as a weapon and use it as his own. I think that would also be really cool for his character. Essentially, a stormtrooper, a guy working for the bad guys, is now wielding the weapon of someone who was once considered as the best of the good guys. This would lead us to the finale, a big bombastic finale in my opinion, one of the biggest and most action-packed space battles in all of Star Wars essentially. In this battle, Poe would lead the Resistance in one final charge against the First Order. He beats them and destroys the ship, the main, mothership that Hux is on. Hux dies going down with the ship. And I think that it would be really cool if this battle took place over a nostalgic or an important planet. Something like Naboo or Coruscant would be very fitting for this situation. Finn would also be in this battle, however he would be on the land forces, and he would be going against Captain Phasma. As I mentioned in my last video, Captain Phasma would beat Finn in The Last Jedi, and she would survive all the way into this movie, Path of the Jedi. And she and Finn would have one more hand-to-hand combat duel. So it could be Finn with his lightsaber and she has like her energy gun or a Beskar spear or something crazy like that. And Finn would finally end up winning Captain Phasma in this fight, also showing that he has come a long way in his training as he stabs and slashes her and the life, and her life force leaves her eyes or whatever. Finn would tell her, "Rebel scum." I think it's a really cool scene from the Last Jedi deleted scene that got cut out. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, here it is.
You were always scum.
Rebel scum.
I think something reminiscent of that scene would really help improve Finn's character, and honestly might even make him a fan favorite. People love that scene despite it being a deleted scene, and a lot of people wish it was in the actual movie. So again, something akin to that with Jedi Finn, Jedi Force wielding Finn beating Phasma would be very cathartic for the overall story that a lot of people wanted. And then we'd have the battle that matters most, Rey versus Kylo. Basically, this battle would be reminiscent and symbolic of all the things that led us here. Rey would represent all the Jedi that came before her, and she would have that big pep talk again before the final battle instead of it acting like an ex machina, while Kylo would be the most Sith-like Skywalker. He's irredeemable. He's even worse off than Vader could ever be. And, that gives him a bit of an edge to make this final fight really feel like, yeah, there's a lot at stake. So Rey and Kylo would of course have their big climactic bloody showdown, and it would end with Rey finally beating Kylo, making up for the loss she suffered earlier in the film. And when she strikes him down, we get to see a glimpse of old Ben Solo, where he says he's sorry as he draws out his final breath. He also thanks Rey for ending his suffering, because basically we get to see how much the dark side took a toll on his character. In the original Duel of Fate script, they did say that Kylo got scarred early on in the movie, so I think having those scars and seeing his body slowly be deformed because of how much he dedicated himself to the dark side would be really cool. It's something akin to Palpatine. They even mentioned in the Darth Plagueis novel that Plagueis himself kind of looked a bit deteriorated because of how much he was using the dark side and how much he had engulfed himself in it. So I think something similar happening with Kylo's body would be more or less the same, such as when Rey strikes him down, he would thank her for releasing him from his suffering, and he would also thank her for being the last person, the only person who was able to always see the light in him, even though it had long since extinguished. So again, Kylo would be an irredeemable villain, but Rey would still be seeing the best in him. She would be the only character in the movie and of the cast who would still be seeing the best in Kylo Ren, thinking she could turn him back to Ben Solo. However, that was not the case, and she wasn't able to win in this fight. However, Ben does thank her, as mentioned, for still seeing the good in him, even though he was long gone, or despite everything he had done. And he finally dies. No Force ghost. He doesn't fade into the Force like he freaking has a physical body when he dies. And here was a bit of concept art for the mothership I was talking about. The ship Hux is on over Coruscant. Again, the battle could be over Coruscant, over Naboo. I don't really care. But I think something akin to this would be cool, where the Resistance is hitting this thing with everything they can. Because it looks heavily armored. Like, you can't break through this thing. So I think them taking down this ship would be really cool for basically the story. Like, the end goal is take down the ship and get the First Order to stop having a hold on Coruscant and the other core worlds. And then, free the galaxy and whatnot. The movie would then end with the galaxy returning back to normal, and the fear and dread we felt earlier in the movie, again when we were looking when we were looking at things through normal people's eyes, as they get to react to how the First Order had taken over, is now losing its hold. We no longer have that sense of dread and horror. Now things are more peaceful. Things are lighter in a sense. And of course, the movie would end with Rey and Finn setting up a new Jedi temple on, this is my personal opinion, Naboo. I do think the new official Jedi temple should be on Naboo of all places, especially over Padme's former palace or grave, depending on which one got destroyed first or reconstructed over. I do think it would be very poetic and symbolic if the new Jedi temple got set up on Naboo. Again, maybe over Padme's palace or grave, just to really set that mood in. And of course, as mentioned, Rey would become the new Grand Master of this new Jedi Order, and Finn, her apprentice, the first in a long line of new Jedi. New Jedi that they would set out across the galaxy to go and find and bring them into the Order and keep them in the lights of the Force, thus keeping everything balanced. The frickin' end. And that is my version of what Rise of Skywalker could have been, or I guess in my mind, Path of the Jedi. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, why did I call it Path of the Jedi? Well, simply because this movie actually shows what it means to be a Jedi, helping, relating to, and inspiring people of the galaxy. That's what a Jedi should be doing. That's why I was saying we even need to see things from the public's point of view, understand how they feel about the First Order and where they think the galaxy is going. And not to mention, in this movie, it would highlight Rey's greatest quality, that she never loses the sight of good in people, especially in Kylo. She never loses sight of the light in him, of the man he could become, until the very last moment when she's forced to strike him down. This shows that, and Rey's supposed to be like a placeholder for all of these Jedi, showing that Jedi are supposed to help people and see the true best in these guys. And at the end of the movie, she and Finn are the last of the Jedi, and they need to go and find other Force users to help rebuild their culture once again, to rebuild that connection to the cosmic force, to feel that thing that penetrates all living beings. That's why I also think the battle at the end should be the biggest battle ever, as we see so many people here and how they're all affected by this war and how they could be affected after the war. That's again why I said Path of the Jedi. Personally, it would also be really cool if we got to see Luke training the next two Jedi who start the New Order in a movie called Path of the Jedi. It makes perfect sense at that point. The movie itself would be a bittersweet ending. As much as I say that the galaxy now gets a bit more life and light by the end of it, for the characters themselves, we do get to see how they've changed, either for better or for worse. And I think this would be a nice middle road for the saga to conclude on. Think about it. Revenge of the Sith had a bad ending with the villain winning. Return of the Jedi had a feel-good ending with the heroes winning and there being hope for the future. So it would only make sense that Path of the Jedi would have a bittersweet ending. The heroes won, but they lost so much to get here. However, the future is brighter than ever because of these sacrifices. This ending even puts into perspective why the Jedi of old had no connections. It would constantly raise the question of what is more important, your dedication to the Jedi and keeping balance in the Force, or the safety of your loved ones. Rey was able to make a compromise between the two, something Anakin wasn't able to do until his final moments, and something Luke lost sight of over the years. You see, it's like poetry. It freaking rhymes! Anyways, guys, that's it for today's video. It was basically me giving a sort of fan fiction ending to the sequel trilogy, but also writing it in a way that makes sense. I'm not changing the movie entirely, I'm modifying it, taking out elements that the movie put in and replacing them while still giving it that flow to make it seem more believable while approachable to all audiences, not just the hardcore fans. Of course, while I myself am a writer, I am not like a big Hollywood film studio writer, that kind of level, you know? like I'm still a noob, essentially. I'm still kind of new into the writing world. So I'm not gonna pretend like I'm better than Disney at doing their job. I'm just saying I feel like there was a lot of good ideas, a lot of great potential for this sequel trilogy that they just kind of missed out on, all in the sake of having two directors just kind of barking at each other over how to make movies, or whose movie is better, or whose movie made more money, and who's trying to make a point here. That's not what Star Wars is about. Star Wars is a fantasy space opera. You get to see basically everything we know about cinema in this movie: good versus evil, normal, humble people becoming great legends. You get to see different styles of filmmaking and storytelling here. Star Wars has always been the most basic form of storytelling since the beginning. It's always been more or less black and white. And yes, there are areas of gray here and there, but the most basic thing of Star Wars is that black and whiteness. To be so simple and create something big out of something so simple. That's why it's such a phenomenon. And why I feel like the sequel trilogy missed that point entirely. It was just kind of meandering without having a sort of end goal in mind. The sequel trilogy tried to be something way bigger than it should have been, when it could have started off simple. Start off simple, end off amazing, in my opinion. And some of the concept art, and of course for this idea that I came up with, I used a lot of inspiration from the concept art and like overall basis of Duel of the Fates. I don't know much about the Duel of the Fates concept. I never read the script or anything. I just knew like the overall story they were going for, the kind of structure they wanted. And seeing pieces of art like this just blows me away, because this is Star Wars, something big and grand, but at the same time something very simple and small. We get to see friends around a campfire here sharing stories with one another, but there's this huge big galaxy that they are fighting for, something to keep the peace in and live their lives to the fullest. That's Star Wars to me. Something simple, yet so big, and also just mystical about it. That charm that's there with the Jedi and the Sith and their ever expanding beliefs, and how this affects the normal people of the galaxy, and how everyone's lives can be changed by one simple decision, just domino effecting into something bigger. And as said, I do feel like the sequel trilogy missed out on a lot of that. So this video is kind of me like licking my own wounds as to what I think it could have been about. How this movie, The Rise of Skywalker, could have been a really impactful end to the trilogy if we didn't have like these directors and executives barking over each other over who's the better creative or who's gonna make the more money in the end. Because really, Star Wars isn't about that, in my opinion. However, as mentioned, it really is just a fan fiction at the end of the day. And you don't have to take it too seriously, and it's not like I'm challenging Star Wars and who can make the better movie, because I clearly do not have the money or the talent to do all of it. But as mentioned, as an up-and-coming writer, I do think it's important to look at every aspect of a story and try and modify it for everyone to enjoy, not just yourself. And so that's what I thought this was gonna be. So yeah, tell me guys, what did you think of this script? I don't think I need to ask you what you thought of The Rise of Skywalker. Everyone kind of agrees it's not a great movie. But what did you think of this fan script of sorts? Would you have liked to see this movie come to life? Are there things about it you would have changed? Do you think I got my point across properly? Or do you think I'm also just trying to dig in too deep to something that should already be simple, and just pull what I can from the simplicity of it and give it its own energy? I'd like to know what you think about it down below in the comments. And of course, I feel like I should say it. Big and huge thanks to Cocomelon Variety Hour, Mr. Sunday Movies, and Hello Greedo for the footage you see in this video. Hello Greedo helped with the concept art. Mr. Sunday Movies and Cocomelon Variety Hour, they used the footage. I'm a shameless thief, I know it. Go subscribe to their channels. Links to all of them down in the description below. So thank you so very much for watching, guys. Be sure to like if you like, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that notification bell to be part of the team. Again, leave your comments. I would love to hear what your thoughts are for the sequel trilogy, what you would have changed or what you would have liked to see about it. Because I know a lot of people have like different thoughts on sequels. Some wanted to focus on the main characters shortly after the original trilogy, just some few years later, focusing on like Luke, Leia, and Han forming a new government. Some want to modify the ideas that the sequel trilogy gave us and make it better. So I'd like to know your ideas. Thank you so very much for watching, guys. I've tried my best to work on this video. Again, it's been an idea in my head for about a year, so I hope it really comes out well, and I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you so very much for watching. I have been Captainphoenix, and with that, I will see you in another universe. Goodbye, my Rangers.